All right. Well, in the interest of time, let's go ahead and convene. First order of business will just be approval of the November minutes. Were there any? We have to do roll call because we have. Yeah. So Richard Smith present.
Sean Sullivan present.
PJ Klein present.
Jean Estens present.
Jessica Cannon present.
David Ingram present.
Dave Mays present. All right, good stuff. Then we will do approval of November minutes. Do we have any discussion about the November minutes or anything that needs to be added?
Well, one more to add to it. Which we'll add you to the roll call.
Thank you. Can you state my name?
Yes,
sure.
Phyllis Goodson is here.
So discussion of November minutes.
Okay. Anything on the minutes?
No.
No. Okay.
All right. In that case, we'll move right along to item number 1, the review of the final report for Clean Energy Advisory Committee for 2023. Turn that over to Dave.
Yeah, just the final printed copy. Wanted to give you all a copy of the presentation that will go in front of City Council tomorrow night. Did incorporate some of the items that we discussed at our last meeting, trying to ensure we covered all the things that you guys had comments about. You know, I don't know if we need to go back through each of those, but you know, I think it's, you know, we cover all of the bases pretty well with accomplishments that we achieved this year, as well as, you know, kind of just the history of the committee, as well as, you know, looking forward to, you know, what we're going to be doing in 2024, which, you know, we're going to perhaps talk a little bit and plan and strategize and just kind of get on the same page with our next item that's on the agenda today. Yeah, just wanted to, I guess, give the opportunity for you guys to, you know, overall thoughts on the report for this year, or
So how is the report and the presentation? How do they go together? You kind of like give them the report and then just give them.
Yeah, they
City Council gets everything in advance of the meeting. You know, so they've had the report, and they've had the presentation for a week probably. Well, yeah, I said this at our discussion. Part of what will be presented is you know, we've got 2 new council members. Tonight is not tonight. Tomorrow night will be their first official council meeting. So the history and background from the ad hoc task force, I'm not sure has been fully passed along to them. Every new council member goes through an orientation session. But, you know, they've got 15, 18 different committees. They've got all sorts of different reports and backgrounds, and this is just one of them. So whether or not they've actually seen the ad hoc task force report, I don't know.
Yeah.
So first couple of slides are going to be to just remind them and also inform the 2 new council members that we did this back in 2020 and 2021, and set these goals. And that's, you know, really the purpose of this committee, is to help us come up with recommendations to achieve those goals. So
You're going to introduce Rich.
Yes.
Background. I mean, maybe it's good just to have a copy of this stuff. Don't know that just from private.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it than just that one sentence. So,
yeah.
I've already made the suggestion to provide this.
Yeah.
But there, you know, there's so much that they're trying to push towards those 2 new council members. And there's only so much that a person can absorb, so. Sorry?
Bucket becomes full.
Bucket becomes full, and we gotta wait till the bucket grows a little bit, so.
We do have extra copies of that report.
Yeah, get me two of them, I'll
Yeah,
take them
we-
to the meeting tomorrow night.
So are we gonna be soliciting feedback from city council, but at least the two new members of provide feedback on everybody to see?
I don't think so, right, based on our conversation.
Maybe not during the meeting, but in general.
We will not be soliciting, but my guess is we may get some either way. And again, we're still trying to peck away at the learning opportunities that we kind of talked around over the past 6 months or so. I don't have an answer on that yet, but that's still an active topic.
Because based on our conversation, my understanding is that, city council has the option to be as involved as they would like to be in committees, but we cannot actively request their participation, right?
The purpose of the group is to provide advice to council, the staff. So we can then come up with an actual means of implementation.
Is it out of line for us to invite them if they ever care to join us on monthly meetings? If they wanted to come listen in or share ideas or thoughts?
My pathway to do that would be through the deputy city manager that I report to. So if there's interactions outside of that between committee members, that is what it is.
Thank you.
We notice things to the two members, basically this topic at all.
I've had about that much interaction with them, so face to face, I couldn't tell you. Based on what I've seen, probably more so on Mr. Joyner's website, he probably has a higher degree of interest in this, at least what I've seen, but purely speculation on my part.
His campaign certainly had quite a bit of interest in the topic. So, they may very well have some comments, who knows, at the end of this, even if brief, maybe not any questions, but it'll be interesting. Yeah.
How much interest, so after he gives this presentation, I wasn't at the one last year, I didn't watch it, but do they ask questions afterwards, or is it just kind of a presentation?
It's very
Depends on the day.
Okay.
It depends on the day, depends on, it's highly variable. Sometimes you think this thing is going to bring so much controversy and questions, and it just breezes right through. And then there's something that's totally mundane, and you spend an hour talking about it. So I don't know, to be honest with you.
You prepare to be unprepared.
Yeah, prepare. Yeah, we try to be as prepared as we can be, not knowing what questions might bear, but I don't think questions are bad. That shows a level of interest, especially as it relates to this sort of report. But there's 5 reports on this one agenda. One is CFPUA. There's an annual financial report. We have 2.
I haven't looked at the agenda yet. Where do we fall in the presentation order?
3rd. There'll be two before.
If I was a city council member, dollars and Gen X would take precedence over clean energy in my head. So I can't blame them.
Gen X and clean energy.
True that.
all environmental related, so.
Anyway, it looks good to me. I have no.
Yeah, you know, it's so much of, I think what we work on is not something that's going to happen necessarily tomorrow, but
Right.
longer range planning. So as we look at what we've accomplished and kind of continue to kind of push forward, you know, take for example our spending of the EECVG funding for our fleet transition study. You know, we've been talking about that for a while, but to finally, you know, we still got a few steps to go through before we, you know, actually send off our final application to DOE. But you know, hopefully, you know, those kind of efforts will bear fruit here in this next year. So
at the end of our presentation, do we have to ask City Council? So we need from you, we need money, need resources.
That comes through the budget. That comes through the budget process. I mean, we essentially, at the end of the presentation, talk about what our opportunities are to focus on in 2024 as a committee.
Not seeing where it says we need money to do this. Not specifically says this is, all this is not free.
I think Dave's position, or what the right word would be, is that like this presentation is not the platform for that. Like this is supposed to be just an informational, here are the facts of what our activities have been for the last year.
Essentially, that is correct.
I mean, I'm not trying to dollarize this stuff. I'm just saying, like, new energy efficiency, there's very little you can do.
So I think there's it seems like there's kind of a feeling from the committee that, like, you know, the committee wants some kind of feedback from city council. I understand that this presentation might not be is not the appropriate place for that. But then I would say maybe it's the committee would like to instruct or recommend city staff to follow the proper chain of command so that we can try and get some communication or feedback from city council, both on what it is that the committee feels like we need to help city staff achieve these goals, and also, you know, feedback from city council as far as their opinions or goals, their own goals for this kind of work.
The only feedback becomes, this is our chart.
Right.
So are we still marching to this?
That's what today is supposed to.
I mean, if the answer is yes, then how we get there is through all these things that we talked about on this ranking in which we prioritize. But again, a lot of this, especially the energy efficiency stuff, costs money. You know, adopting a policy, those don't cost money. Actually replacing vehicles.
as far as vehicle goes, so every vehicle we own has a replacement, you know, cycle budgeted into each vehicle. So what we'd be looking at is either justifying the increased cost or you know, looking at that delta between what
Well, the fleet transition study should be included in that scope of work. But I mean, PJ makes a good point that, you know, you know, number one on the priority list here is energy efficiency measures, and you know, they can give you, like you said, they give you a budget every year, but it is not a significant budget.
And that's just my sustainability budget. You know, certainly some energy efficiency would fall under you know, general facilities, and their budget is like fire department. We're about to replace a bunch of HVAC units there, and we're definitely targeting models that go in, so, you know, some project, some also funded under capital improvements. I would imagine like some of the bigger upgrades you did, such as City Hall and the new systems that were put in there. So I would say the combination of those budgets definitely helps us with these energy efficiency. We've already had a meeting about possible LED lighting replacement for the new facility, Skyline Center. It'll be an ongoing. We're going to be looking at getting some potential pricing for that. So there's money, I would say, in different buckets out there that can be tapped into. I mean, it would be, you know, I don't know if we necessarily need it all in one bucket to implement energy efficiency, but
We do have under energy efficiency focus in 2024 pursue grant funding to offset costs. We write pursue funding. That'd be grant.
Including grants. I mean, I think your recommendation and suggestion about really kind of talking about this from a broader scale, you know, doing some things that are going to naturally progress, and like you're talking about, you know, fleet transition and stuff like that. But then, you know, are there other opportunities where we can help escalate the timeline to move some of these things forward, whether through grants, partnerships with other companies, or whatever it may be?
I just don't want us to get to year 2035. It's 2033. We're saying we need $15 million to get this objective. Yeah. We already talked about that. Duke Energy's probably going to give us space this out. We have 11 more years. I know we're chipping away.
And I mean, it's in my mind, it's 100% worth trying to see if, you know, city council is open to the idea of like, we can show you, you know, if you spend X amount of dollars on this energy efficiency improvement, within 2 years you get your ROI back, and then in 5 years you have this much extra savings. I mean, it can, depending on the opinion of city council, that can get it to where you're making proactive changes rather than reactive changes, where half of our ballasts are burned out, time to switch to LEDs, you know, well, we can switch that out proactively 5 years early and save that money before we have to come up with that expense, you know, or we have this HVAC unit that's 20 years old, and we know in the next 2 or 3 years it'll come time to replace it. But if we replace it now, we can start saving that money back, you know, faster and get, you know, things like that. And so I don't know what city council's pulse on that would be, but I definitely think it's worth investigating it, because if they're willing to be more proactive about it, I mean, ultimately it ends up being more dollars back in their pocket with the way that energy efficiency works.
Yeah, we are about in our current budget process right now. We ask for more in the sustainability, energy efficiency budget line.
I think if we do, then we better have a plan to do so.
I think if you
the more detail that we put into that,
yeah,
more, yeah. And even the information on ROI, if we can spell that out, the better off we are.
Yeah.
So there's no qualms about that, especially if we can show that return. I will say this is with the future sale of this property and the purchase of the property down there. Right now, there's a lot of focus on trying to buy down some of the debt that we are in right now. We have no debt capacity right now. We're tapped out until we buy down some of this debt. And actually, a little bit is going to be bought down tomorrow night. They will. We actually sold 3 properties. So we're buying down $1.6 million worth of debt, $1.6 million worth of debt. So they're fairly laser, and that's going to be part of the challenge with the budget this year. I say this every year, every budget is challenging, and they are, but I've never been a part of any process where our ability to purchase debt was tapped out. This is a first for me in 28 years of being here, so that's a little bit unique. I'm saying this to y'all so that y'all are understanding of the fact that everybody in this room, everybody on this committee is laser focused on this. And their focus is not so laser. It's a bigger, broader operational, citywide operational kind of thing. So
the way I try and look at it in my career anyway is I look at energy efficiency expenditures as a way of getting future dollars back. And so I think that's more easily digestible by people who are not laser focused on energy efficiency, because it's like, look, you don't have to care about how many trees we're saving or the kittens that are going to be able to get off the street or whatever. You know, it's like at the end of the day, this is going to give you more of the funds that you're looking for. You know, you're saying we need funds to do just our basic operations. Spending a little bit of money here will get you those extra funds in the midterm. You know,
we know energy costs are going up.
Yeah, I mean, Duke's rates are up like 35% over last year. I mean, you're paying like almost 35% more with all the riders on your utility costs. So you got to offset. I mean, just you know, hey, I get that you don't have any money. We're not even talking about finding you money. We're talking about keeping you from losing you 30% more of it to the energy company.
well, I'll add to a talking point that I think you can emphasize, and you've said it very clearly, very loudly in this room, is that, and it relates to the cleanest energy is the energy that we don't use. I mean,
And in my mind, you spin that even more for a city council member, and it's not the cleanest, but the cheapest unit of energy is the one that we don't have to buy.
right. That's a great talking point. So if we want to formulate something, then we certainly can. But we need to have
Numbers to it.
Do you have a?
We need to have.
Do you have a list of replacement items, like from a facilities perspective? Chillers, HVAC units, whatever that we're going to be replacing. We have already a plan, a 5-year, 10-year plan to replace them, and be able to accelerate those with funding to give us energy efficiency.
Yeah. So in fact, we submitted a capital request, but again, I got no debt. I have no debt to be able to fund that.
Use third-party finance.
We already do that.
I mean, third-party energy as a service. They come in and they'll put in the HVAC for you, and you give them a portion of your savings.
The times that we've tried to go down that road, we've had very few facilities that have enough size to them that warrant their investment. We have a lot of facilities, but they're 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 square feet. They're just not of a size. In fact, the place that we looked at it was in this building right here. It ended up not making sense, and that's probably been about 7 or 8 years ago. So we have data on most of the facilities that we have that are greater than 10 years of age. And I mean, Dave's right. We're trying to bid right now a replacement of about 11 air handlers at our headquarters, and all of those will be replaced with newer, much more energy efficient. We'll claim the Smart Saver rebates that we can get by doing that. But I'm doing that quite simply because 2 of the air handlers in that building don't function right now. So I've got to, and I'm taking advantage of the fact that I've got money in the bank right now that I can proactively, it's not somewhat proactively, but somewhat reactively replace those units. I don't have enough to look at everything else that's already at the end of life. Not dead yet, but it's past its expected life, and be able to replace that, because I've also got to use that same pot of money to keep buildings functioning through the end of this fiscal year. We're going to do as much as we can. I do not know if they will find room in the capital improvement program to fund the HVAC replacements that I've requested based on age. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but I've also got roofs that have to be replaced.
It's all documented, these HVAC units, what our savings are, it's supposed to be here.
Say that again now.
The units that you're replacing, we have a document that tells us, you know, the savings is this per unit, some kind of progress to show that we're doing this, but we're also getting energy efficiency.
He's asking like specs on the new units.
Not necessarily specs,
Well,
but yes,
you can
specs in order to get the info. Like, I think that's a good example of something to show that, hey, as we're replacing, we're not just going back to like time. More efficient. There is savings, overall savings, operating expense savings.
We can go back and look at some of the other ones that we've done. Unfortunately, our ability to do that has been very reactive. We to a great extent, we're managing our facilities to death, meaning that run it until it stops working and then replace it, rather than replace it before it dies, and then you don't inconvenience the occupants of the building, you don't cause another sort of problem because of failure.
So I think one of the things, like, I don't want to speak for PJ, but at least in my opinion, like, or my experience, there's basically, I mean, everywhere, every publicly, you know, government, K through 12, publicly owned hospitals, whatever, they all run that way, right? Because there's never enough money to go around. But with energy efficiency, when it succeeds, what you can get is you can get to the point where if they're willing to put them, and I understand this year you're saying we have no debt we can use. I understand that. I'm just saying, like, as a general principle, like as a process, you can get to the point where if they are willing to put a little bit of that money up front, what you end up with is you can get out of that reactive cycle and actually get into the proactive cycle. And then that creates a surplus, because now you're not dealing with as much like expenditures for maintenance and emergency breakdowns and band-aids and everything else. But it also just overall makes your life easier, because now you're better equipped, because you were able to spend a little bit more money up front and get ahead of it. Now you can plan for it better. And so it just makes like it ends up making the whole process of building maintenance, of building facilities management cheaper, because you're being able to be proactive and do the preventative maintenance and that kind of stuff. But it takes that upfront. We're willing to put in the money, you know, even whatever, however much it might be upfront, so that we can try and get ahead of that. It takes that one painful step to then make everything better and life easier going down the road. And I, you know, believe me, in my work, I completely understand why that is a hard push, and that's why not everyone does it. But I think it's just as a in the energy efficiency field, like that is a kind of established, like you can see the case studies of like where people put the money up front, like everything cascades better moving forward.
Maybe part of the narrative too is understanding today's financial situation and all the expenditures of last year and kind of moving forward. That part of this year is the analysis, but kind of laying the foundation. So as we look toward the following year, maybe some of the analysis that can be done this year will help build that case further. And me introducing it and kind of, you know.
So let us work on a couple of examples to your your point, BJ, because I know that we've got some out there. We can go back and do some analysis and see what changed after units were replaced.
And you can do, like, I know David's been doing a lot of the lighting retrofits, and those are those are just straight math. This many bulbs use this many kilowatt hours. The new LED bulbs use this many kilowatt hours. Boom, here's our save. You know, you can do that on a piece of scratch paper in 5 minutes. You know, and those are easy. Lighting is usually the easiest because, like, we know how many hours they run. They use the same amount of power the whole time. Yada yada yada.
Well, we've got all the data in your software, so
Yeah, I mean, we've got some of that info already for some of the LEDs we've already done.
The other question I had, like you were saying with the 10 air handlers, is are you exploring any, when it comes time for, even though it's in some cases like this reactive replacement, are you exploring not only like just more efficient equipment, but a more efficient way for that equipment to run? So I know only some of the buildings have BAS. Are the other ones just like standalone thermostats? You know, they go up, they go down, that's it? Or
yeah.
So for example, like you said, fire headquarters, is that a BAS building? Is that just?
It is.
Okay, so.
It is as of 2 years ago.
Okay. So now that it's time to replace those 10 air handlers, my question is, do you look at, okay, what's the most efficient air handler that, you know, does the exact same thing? Or do you look at like, well, can we spend an extra $1,000 on carbon dioxide sensors, can we now make our outside air demand based so that we're not sucking in 110 degree, 90% humidity air all summer, you know, because we don't need it, because we've got 2 people working in their office and we don't need that much outside air. So I'm just asking if that's like, if that's part of the like, hey, we're going to make it more efficient. Is that part of the like investigation of like, can we make it more efficient how it runs? Or is it just like, you know, hey, we have this air handler that has this tonnage and needs this much. What's the fastest tool and, you know, fastest car on the lot now?
So that? Yes and no to your question.
Okay.
Probably not in the level of detail that you just explained it.
Sure.
But we do pursue these sorts of replacements, making sure that whatever we replace them with, you qualify for the Smart Saver program.
Okay.
And not in every case, but in most cases, what my direction has been is that when we bid out the replacements, we try to look at a price quote for in-kind, an in-kind level, and the next level or level 2 levels up. So we haven't, we have projecting using funding for David's budget this year at adding some points in police headquarters that will help us better manage the system for police headquarters. Police headquarters, now it would be second in line to the Skyline building as the energy user. That's 90,000 square foot, 24/7 facility. So it's by far our biggest energy hog. So we're looking at, I've got a staff member he's an HVAC. It's very good.
Yeah.
And we've got some recommendations that we're going to pursue with a contract to add those points so we can better manage that system for that purpose. So some of it directly yes, some of it's kind of yes.
Sure.
Has the city ever completed or considered a performance contract?
Well, that goes back to the question that PJ asked.
Not big enough.
We looked at it. It's been about 7 or 8 years ago. We did look at it, and it was for this building right here.
Okay, so you're saying that's it.
Yeah, energy reserves, performance contracts.
Do you have those at Corning?
Not figure out how to fix our funding.
my former company, that's what we performed was energy service contracts. I would.
Well, offline from this meeting, if y'all would like to have
There's a lot of people that do it.
Yeah, but I would appreciate just a
Discussion on
separate
it.
discussion so that we can become smarter, and if there is an opportunity, we can pursue it. But when we did it before, I tried to turn over every rock, and there was nothing there that allowed us to gain any traction on that sort of thing, but at least with our facilities.
One thing I think, like, one thing that seems like some very low hanging fruit to me that I think kind of falls, it's not clearly in one bucket, so it falls through the cracks, is the idea of like kind of what I just was talking about, where we're not necessarily talking about like redesigning a whole system. We're talking about just straight replacing equipment, but as we need to replace equipment, can we make the sequencing and the programming of it more efficient? Because there can be some pretty significant savings based on just very simple changes. You know, one example would be like I have a client in Michigan who right now, like, they're running their chillers, and guess what? It's 15 degrees outside, and when they enable their economizers that open their outside air dampers, we're pulling in 15-degree air and getting all the cooling we need, and the chillers can turn off. You know, and all that required was, you know, wiring in an actuating damper, which you probably have already, kind of just based on code requirements, and making a control sequence for that. But, you know, your HVAC guys, it's not their job to figure out how do we make the system more efficient. Their job is to how to keep it running, you know, and David's job is not to redesign your HVAC systems, it's to manage your energy, you know. And so like that process or that idea or that energy efficiency measure doesn't really fall into one specific person's purview. And so it falls through the cracks, even though it's like a pretty low cost, high savings opportunity.
Well,
and I'm not suggesting you hire somebody who's like, now it's your job to think of these things, you know, but like, just as like
I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think the opportunity is there for us to entertain that, especially with the staff that we have. Mm-hmm. We have two very talented individuals when it comes to HVAC. Yeah. And I don't think that's out of bounds to consider it. So it's certainly something that we can. Got their brains, we might as well access as much of it as we can. Absolutely.
And if you're, you know, if it's one of those things where like, if you're spending the money on the equipment anyway, you know, if we can tack on an extra $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever it is for the sensors that we need to make it happen, then, you know, that's an easy way to accomplish that goal versus like, hey, I need an extra $80,000 for a more efficient system, or like, hey, we want to redo all the ductwork or whatever it is. You know, it's a lot easier to make that little small, hey, while we're buying all this stuff, let's just tack on this line item, you know, versus.
I think a lot of the stuff we just talked about ties into our next.
Yeah, it does. So I was gonna, is there any more discussion about the final copy of the annual report or the presentation that we're doing tomorrow?
I have one more.
Yes, sir.
No, Richard will be there. If anybody else has the opportunity just to be there, I think it would be great to show, you know, the committee has a level of interest and engagement. If you're able, I think it is the third report that will be given. They always happen at the very beginning of the meeting, so meeting starts at 6:30. Hopefully, it would be done no later than 7:15.
Which location?
Right across the street.
Still there?
Yep.
Nothing's transitioned yet?
Well, everything but that has transitioned.
Yeah. So that's why I wasn't sure if that had been, I'm trying to make arrangements. I've got something else that I'm trying to.
Okay, great. Yeah. If you can make it, great. If not, I certainly understand. But that is the last thing that we are supposed to move out of that building. I don't know when that's going to occur, but we'll be by tomorrow night.
In that case, let's move on to agenda item number 2, where we're going to do a interactive whiteboarding prioritizing discussion session.
Also, just I'd like to recognize Andrea joined as well, so.
Add it to the
Hey,
roll
Andrea.
call.
Hi, sorry, my Zoom was updating and it took forever to get on, so apologies.
No worries.
So yeah, we don't really have a set format for how we want to do this. Unless, I don't know, maybe did you have an idea?
No set format, kind of either open discussions. I did have some sticky notes, depending on how, if we just want to write things up there or if we just want to put ideas in, kind of what we think are most important as we, I thought as we start this new year, it'd be a good idea just to kind of have this discussion and just kind of see where we are. I
want to speak for you, but I thought it was a pretty safe assumption. PJ and I are both number one in energy efficiency. Not a surprise, but just if we're outlining and we're talking, like under energy efficiency, we would say things like HVAC optimization, along with that, EAS utilization. Lighting.
Don't use much compressed air, right? They have little small compressors at fire stations. Not much.
As I was, kind of thinking about ideas and, going back over our initial task force report, which, that came before y'all's time, but just kind of the lens that we had in regard to the recommendations there. We kind of listed probably 5 items, kind of criteria that we kind of focus things through, such as costs, both initial costs as well as life cycle costs, feasibility. The other one was impact. How big of an impact was it going to have on meeting our goals? Equity was certainly one of the big ones as well. So there was one, again, just implementation, I think, just how hard would it be to, easy or hard for us to implement. Energy efficiency probably certainly ticks high on all of those boxes. So just, kind of keep those in mind as we work through the exercise as well.
I was just thinking, like looking at this page for, how do we feel we did last year with 7 items? Adopt a LEED green building policy. Do we make progress? I felt like that was the one that I thought.
So that's one that I feel some level of frustration with.
Yeah.
That I feel like David created a policy pretty quickly. I think we, looked at it, discussed, revised, and then approved it pretty quickly, and kind of halted in the working its way up the chain.
Yeah, one like that. Definitely kind of keep in mind, this is again, it's a marathon.
Correct.
So there's a process we have to work through for all of these things, which sometimes take longer than we would like, but definitely
we would like.
Yeah. I was just thinking of, I don't know about the ranking system, I guess is nice, but I feel like we try to tackle everything, but maybe some things don't fall to the bottom. Like, so that being number 3, maybe we did prioritize that one as number 3. But for the EV charging infrastructure, there is one.
Maybe we could, instead of doing like priority of like what's the most important thing or whatever that might be, like maybe we can look at it as like more of a timeline. Like how quickly can we implement something?
Because then Andrea mentioned a couple meetings ago about the minority women business enterprise being kind of like not ranked as
kind of a overall kind of keep it in mind for everything. Process. Even if we're doing energy efficiency work, what can we do to, target local minority women-owned businesses here for projects like that, so. Yep.
Well, at least be inclusive of
Yeah.
in the bidding.
Mm-hmm. It's true, yeah.
I had a couple of thoughts, or a few. One thing that we had in the task force that I don't really see us having here is more like interaction with, if you want to call them companies, developers, businesses, like, because we had I think our first technology subcommittee was like solar, Duke, right? Which is a bit odd, but anyways. And then we had another one, I think was this solar, and we just don't have any. We've had the presentation from UNCW's on the composting, but I mean, should we have presentations like that? I mean, I think we want to focus on like what can we do, because we don't want just like a broad summary of what they do, and then it's like, well, how do we, like when we went to the meeting in Raleigh, I think you said we talked to some offshore wind, it's the most important thing, education. It's like, well, how do you, okay, what, that's the word, but like, how do you get there? What do you yeah. I mean, is that I kind of feel like that's a value, because it also, I feel like maybe one thing we're lacking is our visibility. I think that's great that, one of the items was post on the current or social media thing, and get kind of, more interaction out there. And I think that's what we're kind of saying too, with like, while this next Tuesday's meeting is maybe not the place, but we're trying to get more participation from people into not only like participation, but then also to be visible to them. That's what we're doing, and not just.
I think part of the problem is kind of like what Dave said, where like we have to be careful to not look like what our agenda is necessarily what the council's agenda is. I think kind of walking that fine line, but I think to your point, like I agree with you 100%. Everything you just said, I couldn't agree more. And I think there's a way to try and balance. Like, we're not saying the city of Wilmington is advocating for this stuff, but we are a group that is presenting this information for public consumption, to try and get that extra engagement, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. But to get more of a discussion happening around it, I think is the way that we can do it without necessarily saying like this is our position on it.
So two things. One is admittedly associated with the clean energy goals. We've had this discussion before, but we also have the greenhouse gas emission goals. Admittedly, the knowledge of the employee base of those goals is minimal at best. And it's one thing that's in the business plan that I'm submitting as a part of my budget to budget office and managers, is that needs to change. There needs to be more awareness, knowledge, information that is shared with the employee population, because ultimately they have an impact on our clean energy goals and our goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Is there an Energy Star treasure hunts?
I haven't.
What was the Energy
Star? Like the US EPA Energy Star. They have a whole website on treasure hunts.
Hey, PJ, could you lean in a little bit? Sorry, it's a little muffled. I think if you lean in, Andrew and I can hear it better.
He's at the far end of the table,
Sorry.
away from our one mic.
So the EPA, the Energy Star has treasure hunts, and I understand how they work in industrial facilities. But I think they have it for office buildings too, where you get groups of people, different backgrounds. You may have a finance person, may have somebody who works in maintenance, whatever, and you spend 2 days walking facilities, trying to find opportunities, mostly energy efficiency, but try to find opportunities to improve. And so you can use that as A, finding new projects, but B, educational. Because the finance person looks at it through a different lens than a maintenance person. And so you're also
Absolutely.
also creating.
Go ahead, PJ. Sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah, that dovetails with one of the things that the only thing actually that I was planning to bring up today, and I think we talked about it a little bit in the past, but the idea of an employee participation rewards program, searching for, maybe under the theme of the greenest kilowatt is the one we don't use, and really encouraging employees to come to the table with ideas for, it's a free program that we could be doing with our employees. And yeah, I like that Energy Star and the egg hunt or whatever you called it, treasure hunt type of thing. But that might be something that we can, logistically bring it to as a recommendation. And again, doesn't cost anything unless we want to institute some sort of a minimal rewards program, maybe a quarterly best ideas. And I actually have a link to an ISO site that talks about how to get your employees psyched about something like this. But now I'm looking at the Zoom and I can't find where I could share. If anybody can tell me how to share the link in the Zoom, tell me. But I love that idea, PJ.
Yes.
EPA also does Energy Star certified buildings as well.
Yeah.
So that can be a good feather in the cap, especially for like city council members, where they can say, this year we got 5 of our buildings Energy Star certified.
I'm already looking to be able to apply for that for our new building once I get a year's worth of data. So
it sounds like my number 2 priority is get city employees.
I think that's awareness.
Education.
Education, awareness.
Y'all asked for, we brought in our communications officer at one of the later meetings last year. And I think that what you're saying feeds into that request.
A lot of that conversation was external too. We talk about it.
Yeah. Right. So the second point was just to remind y'all that was something that this group brought up, and it quite honestly kind of opened my eyes to the fact that we don't have a whole lot of awareness of what these goals are. We need to. We're going to make progress on it. We can't.
How does that goal impact you as a city?
Probably impacts me and him more than anybody else.
But how can you make a difference? How can you personally, as a city employee?
Well, I think, and Richard knows this because he's part of the discussion, but a couple of years ago, the buildings division, which is part of my department, was responsible for paying for all the electricity that the city used. Didn't matter who was using it. And
there was no
accountability.
Yep.
So I don't like bringing this up because it gives David Ingram nightmares to think about all the work he had to do to cipher it out. But now the fire department, probably the best example, the fire department pays their own energy bill. So they have a stake in it, which is, it's much better in that sense that if they want to conserve their budget so they can, do something different, buy more SCBAs or whatever, then they have the ability to do that if they want to, improve how they manage their budget.
So they can actually take those savings and use them for something else.
Depending, yeah. I mean, if they have a $15,000 bill for a particular fire station per year and they conserve that so that they're only spending $13,000, they have $2,000 surplus that they can move to another line and do something else with.
It doesn't actually cut their budget.
No, they wouldn't necessarily cut the total budget. They would cut the energy budget.
They would. Although Duke rate increases are probably going to eat up anybody's savings.
But that is something that we've kind of touched on as an opportunity to provide resources for those branches of the facilities that are interested in reducing their usage, providing them resources of how to do that. Hey, you raise your temperature up 2 degrees, you save 3-4%, whatever. And so maybe we can create some kind of, whether it's helpful tips or like a playbook or whatever it might be, for those facilities that are interested in like, hey, you know, we're paying for our electricity, but how do we get it down? Because we don't want to waste all of our money on
I think the fire department would be a great candidate for PJ's, you know, what'd you call them? The treasure hunts. I mean, that's
our new facility too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, you get somebody from IT, you get somebody from HR, it's just take a walk about, go see what opportunities there are.
I think there's a missed opportunity as well. The city's doing a lot of great things. And, you know, the city can be a champion for all of Wilmington, and you're leading by example. So taking some of these things that you guys are doing and making them more public or making it available and a resource, it really is the opportunity to bring people to our area as well. I mean, talk about the great things the city's doing. I mean, I know we've talked about kind of social media and stuff like that, but it could be either on a very large scale or it could be very, very small things that make a huge impact. You know, from the news talking about, you know, something that's kind of tied into this, or a 3-minute TikTok. Hey, have you tried doing this? We, you know, studied this particular things. We changed out lights and this made a difference. That combined with being open, available, maybe to potentially long-term, create a group for business owners, facility owners and stuff, just to share information. I mean, maybe somebody's found this, and that could also tie into bulk buying. So for instance, you know, if the city buys so much of X, maybe if some of these other large facilities or even small facilities want to add on to that and get some of that pricing, some of these companies might be more willing to adjust pricing associated with a larger buy.
That's one of the things, agreed. That's one of the things that still is rattling around in my head from when the communications director came in, was we had talked about that. Like, the city's doing all this stuff that is good PR, and we're not taking advantage of it. And he had said something to the effect of like, we want to be careful about how frequently we're messaging. We don't want to message something unless it's worthwhile messaging on all of our platforms and it's newsworthy enough to send it out, because we don't want to drown people. No offense to him, but like, I couldn't really disagree with that more. You know, so for example, like with, I mean, I keep using it as an example, but it's like a very easy one, is that, you know, you installed the solar lighting on Randall Parkway, the area light. Like, is that news going to affect this, like, change the course of the city of Wilmington? No, but it's a part of our operations that you did that is worth mentioning. And so,
and it hit on a few things too, right?
Yeah, I mean,
cost and safety. Right.
And so it checks off those boxes, and so, you know, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's his call because he's the head of director, he's the director of communications. But like, I would recommend that city staff advocate for more publicity of like the green efforts that we're doing, whether they're like earth shattering. We've installed solar panels on the new gym, and like now we don't have to pay any electric for them, or if it's something as little as like we replaced a dozen area lights with solar ones that are now going to be green and safer and cost less, and et cetera, et cetera. Like, I don't see the need for like a scarcity of information for these wins. I just don't understand that.
Or maybe
like, does it have to be a WECT news story? No, but like, what is the harm in posting that on the City of Wilmington's Facebook page? Like, hey, next time you're down on Randall Parkway, look at our new solar lights that are cost less and are more energy efficient. You know,
there needs to be a separate channel that we think we have enough stories to tell it. A separate platform.
I almost don't like that idea, just because like it gives people the ability to like, hey, I don't care about sustainability, and then they don't subscribe to that channel, so they don't engage with it. But again, it's better than not having it at all. So sure.
I'd like to co-sign on that, and I have to drop it too. I'm so sorry. I have a work meeting, but I just wanted to agree wholeheartedly and say that maybe it's something that, as part of our agenda, based on how the monthly calls go, maybe there is a piece of information that we can agree on that gets passed every month to the communications manager. That way there's a regular cadence to it. After, you know, some of the updates that we're getting, we parse out and decide what is the best kind of blurb to pass along to the public. And then that way, at least once a month, they're hearing from us. And like you said, it doesn't have to be some top news story, but just lets people know that there are people thinking about this, working on this, and keeping it top of mind.
It helps facilitate the overall discussion, and the more people you have talking about it, whether for the city, whether for the personal, whether for their business, it's positive for all of us.
And I think it just helps people be more, sorry, just one last thing before I have to drop. It's just, I think that it helps with comfortability of people that might not be a part of the conversation as often. If you see a couple different headlines, a couple different news stories sprinkled throughout the year, you're more likely, I think, to participate in the overall discussion and engagement. Even if you're not an expert, you feel like you've seen a little bit enough about it. And I think that that also is a different way to really engage the local community. I have to go, but thank you all so much. And I hope you're all doing really well. And I'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, Andrew.
Bye.
Just one thought I had on the way here, which may be a bad idea, I'm not sure. Is there a list of all the committees from the city of Wilmington, just like on a single webpage? I mean, do you see any synergy with them to kind of like tackle things like this? Are they also running like, no one knows we're here, or I mean, not saying that way, but like, would they also be interested in kind of like going down, talking about some stuff like common interests? I just don't know what they are, so I don't know if they're, you know, it's.
It takes like a long touchdown.
No. Okay. Well, it was just a thought. I just thought, like, if they have somebody similar.
Not sure where to go with that one.
Put that back.
No, I do like the suggestion that Andrew was making. I mean, it's as easy for us to add a regular item to the agenda to come up with either suggestions or provide information that might be able to be passed along. That's easy, that's simple, I don't think it's not harmful at all.
And it doesn't have to just be the city. I mean, it could be the city saying, hey, have you heard what Al's doing? This is great for our city. You know what I mean? So kind of tying it in so it's not just the city, though the city's good, but it's inclusive. It brings more people in.
Well, part of our overall goal is that community aspect.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. As part of the like social equity part of it could be, you know, every month we publish a energy saving tip for your home. You know, as far as there's some community like we talk about the communities in need that they don't, you know, every little bit helps. And so if we can give them an energy saving tip for their house or funding opportunity, you know, hey, did you know that this grant is available for weatherization or whatever it might, you know, just something, and that can fall, you know, that can check a couple boxes off of, you know, our mandate. Also.
So I was looking it up, and I don't know if that matters, but it shows that everybody, except for me, its term expires on 1/10/20. Okay. And actually, Jessica's should expire on 1/1/23.
All right, bye, Jessica.
So,
well, I think
these current vacancies, but you have the Clean Energy Committee, the Convention Center Advisory Committee, Wilmington Film Commission, Historical Preservation Commission, Housing Authority, Loan Review Board, Municipal Services, City Council Commission for Women, Parking, Downtown Parking, Parks and Rec, Planning Commission, Sister City Commission, Ports, Beaches and Waterways, Tree and Zoning Adjustments. This says last updated 12/15/2023, so that was just.
I don't think those term expirations are correct.
I'm not sure.
I remember
Everyone's on there but me.
We'll sort that out. That's
Otherwise, a party in 2 days.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I left by myself. That's upcoming or expiring terms.
You touched on something that I just want to provide an update on in regard to Dave and I just had a meeting last week with our staff that work at the Healthy Homes program, just in regard to potentially using some of the EECBG funds as a pool of money that they might be able to tap into to help with some of their weatherization and energy efficiency efforts within that program. So there's more discussion that needs to go into that, but that isn't an area that we're looking at using some of the extra funds from the CBG grant. So stay tuned as more info develops out of that.
So number 3 for me is lower emission vehicles. I use the word lower emission because I think I've mentioned this at one of our previous meetings, that EVs at press right now. Some of the big car manufacturers are looking to go into more hybrid versus EVs. Runs with EV. So I still think this is a good opportunity for us to tackle. We want to tackle our 2050 goal.
Yeah.
Just gotta be careful how we do it. We don't want to put ourselves in a corner where we say you have to buy EV.
Well, and I think we've all agreed that the first step is the food transition study. And so part of that study scope of work would address some of that as far as like what they would recommend.
Yeah, so that probably should be up there. Right. The fleet transition study.
It's all, you need that to be able to give you stuff.
I did look at the original report, and they had 10% by 2025. So we're kind of, I'll say we'll be
Behind the ball on that one.
Well, that was a objective versus a statement.
Right. I'm just saying.
We're well short of that.
Sometimes when these things are in the future.
Yeah, I mean, 50% by 2035. That's going to be pushing itself. But that whole market is still maturing so quick, and I've seen those reports, PJ, as well, just in regard to the slowdown in some of the EV sales. But I know in some respect, I think you have to be careful what you see in the media. I don't think manufacturers are selling them as quickly as they would like to. And hence the media, I think, is jumping down that jumping on the bandwagon that the EVs aren't selling as quickly as they would like. Yeah, but I mean, again, it's that charging infrastructure is still expanding. I mean, it's not only our state, but states all across the country, had to submit plans for EV infrastructure on all major corridors. So as that market continues to get filled in, I know the first of our here in North Carolina NEVI planning. I know they've announced the locations where the stations are going to be going. I think that just came out a couple of weeks ago. So I mean, within the next 5 years, that EV charging infrastructure is going to expand greatly. So then I think you're going to see the vehicles.
But right now, we have a gas budget of a vehicle. We just replace it like a con. There's no, should we go get a hybrid, or should we get a discussion? So I think that's kind of the first. Which
the transition study plan. I mean, one of the bullets on that is helping with an actual policy as well. So if vehicle replacement comes up, there would be decision tree you would have to go down. It's does it, with the goal being it being an EV, and you've got some kind of a justification for not being an EV to suit the job task, then you would have to make that argument. So.
And the fleet transition study would kind of tackle the pilot program that we talked about, or they would recommend.
That's somewhat outside it. I mean, it's one thing we continue to push for. I know our fleet manager was actually just asking about charging infrastructure at the new parking deck, because I haven't heard which department it was, but somebody was interested in EV. I don't know if you have any insight on that, Dave. I haven't talked to Fortune yet about it, but somebody was, who has obviously sits down at the new facility was interested in EV. So
I'd be interested to hear from you two as far as if we're taking this time to reassess where we're at. based on the stuff that we've done so far over the last 2 years, do you feel that the recommendations and the items that we've tackled are progressing in a timely manner, or yes or no? You know,
Both. I mean, your frustrations are not
I'm
misplaced.
You know, I don't want to. I am not particularly frustrated. You know, I'm not losing sleep at night about this. I understand. Well, I don't know, but I understand at least, you know, notoriously the pace of government change and operations is slow. So I'm flabbergasted that it's like been a year and a half and we still don't have a sustainable building policy passed. Like, not losing sleep at night about that or feeling like we're not doing our job or you're not doing your job. But since you guys are the ones who are working in public government, you know, that's why I ask if you feel like these things are moving at the pace that they should.
It's kind of hard to say yes or no.
Sure.
I'll just say both. Phyllis, you just brought up the potential to use buying power to aid outside business. We can't do that. Just the rules that we have around procurement don't allow that. And I say that as an example just to say there's things like that around every corner that we have to deal with in terms of how we operate. And that is what, in the end, causes the most friction and dictates the pace at which we go. Some of it is policy, regulatory, some of it is political and capacity. And I've hired people over the years from the private sector, and they come on board and they just, I mean, their forehead looks swollen and bruised all the time because they just keep running at the wall, and they can't accept, you know, why do we have to do it this way? When I was in this job, you know, it was done the next day, and it's frustrating. And some people survive that, and some people don't.
I'm glad you use the word survive. It's what it is.
Yeah, it is. It's so I wish I wish the building policy had already been to council, but our process to get it to the point that we can present them, we've got a plan. It will probably happen in the first quarter of this calendar year. I wish it had been sooner, but it wasn't. So there's other examples that we could talk about. It's related to that friction. Along the way.
Please don't look at it as I was making a criticism of city staff. I was soliciting your feedback on the process.
Yeah. I think timing plays some into it. You know, politics, I think. You know, I think even like delaying presenting this report, we wanted to push it a little bit just so it gets in front of the council folks. So, which I see as a positive, you know. So, but it does.
Any other items to add?
I think the composting, I mean, I think the composting program is where would you place that though?
I would give, actually, I would give it one.
Well, that's fine. We can list multiple things in each item. That's fine. Like this is a
I think but we don't need to.
I would give it 4. Go ahead and
ranking.
continue that.
Yeah, that's what it is for.
Yeah.
See, I have a problem with composting. Maybe it's lack of knowledge. I'm very minded, so help me, but I've struggled since we've talked about this, how it actually fits in the program. Greenhouse gases, get it. Waste diversion, not bad. But we're not worried about waste, right?
Our city, our garbage truck city
rear trucks. Well, because, you know, they do capture the gases that come off of,
Well, that would be advocating to put more stuff in there, not less.
So I'm not saying it's important, it's important to me. It's not, but when I look at it from a clean energy perspective.
I think because it was one of the recommendations is why it's here.
it falls
And
more under
since-
the community
Social
engagement.
justice,
Yeah, I really like the fact that it was actually included, because I was, having a problem making the connection. But I think it's
If
great
it's
to
there,
have.
yeah.
Exactly. One of the things about this is that from a school perspective, the little kids do it. So as we continue to grow it, the first graders then will have that, and we can introduce more of sustainability as they continue through. This is long-term for us. We're working with Sarah Ducharme with the county. She's with, she works in the landfill. So they actually have funding for the kids to learn about composting and gardening. They have actually found money for us because there's a fee for the folks to come pick up the compost, do what they do. So we are a partner with them. One of the things that I wanted to see in terms of community is how do we get more volunteers outside of the school system? And I think it was Rich, Sean, thank you. Sean mentioned talking with other organizations. Greensboro, you talked about them having a good community garden program. So, can we bring them in to talk about what worked, what didn't work for them? Getting more volunteers. Like I said, we can have volunteers for the program. Whoever's at the school who does the work is pushing that program. So how can we get more community people involved with this? Also UNCW with the students who actually did come in with that particular class, a way to continue this project with that class, even if the students have gone on grant students.
Yeah, I could reach out to the professor there to see if there's an opportunity there.
Yeah.
My biggest interest in this is development. I think the K-12 engagement is the part. Is it sustainability engagement? Because I think it's an easy gateway to that. That's why, because I think, if you start talking to kids about electricity, that's a hard thing for a little kid to grasp. But like, if you start talking about like, we're taking this food and we're turning it into something that's going to be able to more food, like it's hands-on, it's something that gets the kids engaged in thinking about like the environment and they're part of it and that kind of stuff. And then they become more interested and more receptive as they get a little bit older to learning about like, why does it matter that we turn off the lights when we leave the classroom? And also, just like it's not energy related, but also just reducing our waste stream is like a good thing for us to be doing, and especially in a K-12 setting where like there's a massive amount of food waste every day. They have mandated we have to supply a grain, we have to supply a fruit, and unfortunately, with our culture or just for whatever reason, a lot of the kids they take the apple, it goes on the tray, and then as they walk out, it goes right into the trash can. So like there's a massive amount of like, we could be reclaiming this and diverting this waste stream. Like, I get that it's not directly maybe falling into the energy part, but it's like, it's just a good thing to do. So if we can advocate for it.
Well, I think number 4 really goes under number 2, right? It's just awareness in general, internal, external awareness. And part of that awareness is education. Part of that education is composting and waste and clean energy and so forth and so on. But I know a lot of people, at least in the city, that the average person you see on the street talking about the energy and money. So the composting is probably a good start point. Other things. But I think it's all about education, internal and external education.
So what was that? I'm trying to remember what their task was at the school. So they had multiple things to choose from, and they chose that one, which is kind of telling a little bit that it was low hanging fruit. Is that?
I think they came on it because I think they saw, we'd made some pretty good progress in a lot of the other areas.
Okay.
But this one hadn't really been tackled a whole lot, or hadn't been much effort put towards it. So, and it obviously was of interest to them as well. So, yeah, that's why they decided to jump on that one, see if they could, as a class project, make some recommendations. Which, yeah, I thought they did a good job.
It would be, I think it'd be worthwhile to see if the, it kind of depends on the professor, but if they're, I can very easily see it being, last year the kids picked this project, developed a proposal, because it was master of the business, correct?
Public administration.
Yeah, and so, okay, now this semester the project's going to be like, how do we take this, how do we implement or, develop or whatever. I can see a pathway of utilizing the students, utilizing the lessons that can be involved with this process to carry it forward.
Count for see what she says.
I was thinking about, go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, we actually did do a little energy academy with the younger kids. And they, like most cities, they understand money. They do. So when you talk about kilowatt hours, you put some dollars to it. And then they go through that exercise of if we had LEDs versus incandescent lights, what do we say? Do that exercise, and then, we could save however much. What can we do with that? And I think in one class, one kid did all the calculations. He figured out we could buy 1,000 bouncy balls with all the shapes that we had, which I thought was great because they understood from their perspective what we could do, what the possibilities are. So again, with gardening, with all of that, it becomes a sustainability program versus just clean energy or just composting.
Valjean,
Yes.
do y'all have, or are you on track to be a recipient of an EV bus?
They
We
already
have an EV.
Okay, I thought
we
you
actually just started a route.
Yeah.
This in January. I think we got it in maybe October, November time. Yeah.
That would be a good
So
case
we'll
study.
see. It's only been
Oh,
on
you should
the
ask Pender
road
County all
for
about
like a week or two.
I remember your story.
Oh, there's been 3 follow-up stories
Oh, really?
on the same process.
That was all about the charging infrastructure. This initial story I read about. Do they still have a bus?
They have a work order, they have a purchase order in, and some of the city council members are trying to figure out a way to cancel that purchase order. But not city council, sorry, Board of Education. But purchase order's in, they're getting the bus, the infrastructure's coming from Duke. But certainly interesting conversation taking place up there.
Not to take us down a rabbit hole, but there was some program for Duke Energy with the buses where they could actually discharge the bus on weekends when they had peak power problems. Use it as a dispatchable load, dispatchable generation.
Vehicle to grid.
Yeah, but I forgot where they were doing it. It was some sort of bigger city that had a fleet of it.
Yeah.
But like Monday through Friday, they couldn't touch them. But if they needed it during peak hours and Saturdays.
Do you happen to know if, I know the money that's being supplied for those buses is from the Volkswagen settlement. Do you know if any of those funds are available to local government or if it's K-12 only?
Yeah, we've acquired some.
Okay.
That's what, the 2 fast chargers,
Okay.
right? That was part of the VW grant.
As well as the 2 level 2s we're about to put in.
Okay.
I think for number 5, we can put support implementation of federal.
I mean, it's already there.
like there.
No, I'm saying it's already there, like the policy's already there.
And
We need to continue to advocate for.
Do we foresee those policies changing
Yes.
in November?
Yes. Well, I mean, they have the potential to change.
With the new, with,
If you knew the answer come November, I'll take your word for it. Put some money on it.
So I want to just say something that I feel like I still owe y'all, and that is a response from our legislative affairs person on potential for advocacy related to offshore wind. I've been asking, and I'm going to ask a little bit harder next time to see if I can, re-energize that discussion.
I just heard something the other day about offshore wind.
I saw Total Energy joined the Chamber of
Yeah, that's what I
Commerce,
see.
which they own one of the leases.
Yeah, but I don't think that was it. I think it was something at the state level. But either way, I think we need, I don't know if yes, it's support, but it's also monitor. Right? We need to monitor what's going on at the state level.
Yeah.
We could have a governor change parties. We could have, the House or Senate could change, could go from super majorities to just majorities.
Yeah.
And so my follow-up question for legal would be, I wouldn't even necessarily classify it as advocacy. I would almost classify it as education. Is that, from my understanding, from what the people at the State Energy Conference are saying, is it's not even like, hey, we need to push offshore wind. It's more like we just need to educate people about it so that they're not, the first thing that they're hearing about it is not the like NIMBY, not in my backyard people. And if that's the first thing they hear, then they hear, oh God, it's going to destroy the view and it's going to kill all the seabirds and the whales are going to, this, that, and the other thing. And if that's the first thing they hear, that's what they're going to stick to. So being the first and loudest one in the room as far as like, this is just facts. Doesn't even necessarily have to be, the city of Wilmington wants to support this. I mean, obviously that would be my preference, but if the city's not going to be open to that, then just like come to an information section about like the science of wind energy or whatever.
So I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but I've thought about this long and hard. And forget North Carolina's wind potential for a second.
Which is the highest on the eastern seaboard, I'll say.
West. Offshore wind is going to be something that's going to happen. And in order for offshore wind to happen, we need deep water ports, you need railroad, and you need interstate. And we got all three here. And so does Elizabeth City. But the concern is there may be an opportunity in this initiative to advocate for this region, not Wilmington and Hanover County in general, but to support that industry. That may lead to
that's
what
key right there.
Isn't that what Twins is advocating? Like
Not Twins, Towers.
Towers.
Yeah, they're trying to, and they're doing education and all that. I haven't seen a recent update from them, but I mean that's what I've been saying since I joined the task force. Is like if you don't step on it, like
now
Hampton Roads is going to take it, and Port Charles is going to take it.
Yeah.
And Wilmington
Missed opportunity.
will be just like North Carolina.
Well, that's why Boeing's there,
Yeah.
right? That's why Boeing's in.
Do you know if Towers is involved with the city Chamber of Commerce?
I don't think they are, like he said.
So is it worth us like reaching out to someone at Chamber of Commerce to say like, this is a huge economic, like forget the environmental part, just like this is an emerging industry that like
I think she has some understanding of that.
Who interacts with Natalie? English.
Manager's office primarily.
I'm talking a lot. Curious about that.
NCSEA, I think, partnered with the chamber and they did a session.
We both went to it.
So
It was.
they understand the importance of it. It's just how we engage them.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with us advocating for offshore wind, although we think it's a good opportunity. You have a money generator, a revenue opportunity. I think that, in my opinion, without having any inside information, I think that has the best potential before Governor Cooper gets out. He is on a streak right now, bringing our companies into North Carolina.
So you know, maybe there's an opportunity for the city, you know, to advocate for offshore wind, not from an environmental Gippy standpoint, but from a economic, you know, hey, we're trying to bring jobs to Wilmington.
Well, and just to remind you that the task that Kara was sent to do was establish what sort of platform, they don't know who Kara is. Kara is our legislative affairs person.
She a contractor or
City employee. It's to establish what sort of platform already exists that we can utilize, that's, you know, either vetted by the League of Municipalities or some other state advocacy group. And I've been asking repeatedly, and I don't have an answer yet, so I'll ask a little bit more intently to try and.
It would be an opportunity to have her come talk to us, or let us talk to her.
Once she has an answer to that question, yes.
because this isn't going to be a city of Wilmington thing. This isn't going to be a Plano County thing. This is going to be the southeastern North Carolina thing. They put these wind turbines together. It's so many different piece parts.
Yeah.
You can't do it on. You're not going to be able to do it on one mega site.
Yeah, and also if you fail to train like the technicians that go and help with operations and maintenance, they're just going to come from other states. They're not going to train them here. So it's like, it's just this huge missed opportunity.
And Cape Fear right there.
Yeah, and Cape Fear does offshore surveying. They have science, technology, its own program. That's what.
Well, and UNCW has coastal engineering, oceanography.
And you just got NC State up the road.
Right. So hate to cut this short. We are at 2:30, past 2:30, and
I don't think you got it short at all.
yeah, sorry to cut this shorter than it could be, but longer than it was supposed to be.
Thanks for being the scribe.
Sure.
These are great ideas for us to work towards.
I think we should have a follow up at our next meeting. Just have these all in there and just not have a discussion, but see if we can bucketize them.
Yep.
Have them look fine. This is what we're doing.
I don't think that's a word. Made it up. Bucketize.
It's in the consulting dictionary.
You mean I shouldn't use it at the city council meeting tomorrow?
Yeah.
What's the word?
Compartmentalize.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Or bucketize.
We'll bucketize this into some different strategic.
Strategeries.
So yes, we're going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, Jessica, for
See y'all. Thank you.
Yep, and we'll see everybody next month.
I'll try to get there tomorrow night.
Sounds good. Hope to see you there.